Welcome in. That live button, go live button, just really didn't want to go. Welcome into the Paul Kuharsky podcast. I'm Paul Kuharsky from paulkuharsky.com, part of the 440 Sports Network and brought to you by Zen Sports. Here we are. Training camp is underway. Actually, really good to be out there, see some live action going on. Doesn't amp up to full speed and pads until next week, but it's something. There have been developments, and we are seeing players on the field who already have an injury in Chidobe Awuzie, unfortunately going to be out a couple weeks with the calf. But we're going to talk here about some stresses on some players, an actual injury report from the coach, and a variety of other things, particularly as we take your questions. And I know you will have a lot of them. Look forward to seeing a lot of you at the stadium on Saturday morning, which should be interesting. First event over there, first Titans event over there since the construction's begun on new Nissan Stadium. So hopefully it's not too crazy to get in and to get over there. Practice starts at 11. You need you need a ticket in order to get in, but I don't know that those tickets are gone. So you can go over to their website and figure out how to go. DeMarcus will get to you in time. I wanted to talk about stress. And I admit maybe I'm stretching things here a little bit, but I came up with something that I think is worth discussion. Well, I was talking to Peter Skoronski yesterday, and this is after Will Levis was talking about how much less stress he feels heading into his second year. Obviously, he's a starter now. Last year, he missed a lot of camp with the quad injury, and then was behind Malik Willis for a time. Wasn't the first quarterback they went to when Ryan Tannehill got hurt in game, but then took over on the fly when Tannehill was hurt. A lot was thrown at him. It's tough for any rookie quarterback, but he talked about how much less stressful things are, that the stress is way down. And then Peter Skoronski, earlier this week, yesterday, I was talking to him about some other things, but we had this snippet of a conversation which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, a lot less chaos and stress, I feel like, from last offseason, the beginning of camp, to this offseason, the beginning of camp this year. Just like the stress level's way down, know a lot more what to expect. Physically feel a lot more ready for the guard position in terms of technique and just physicality. So I just feel like I'm just so much more comfortable and, less stressed out of like, I don't even know how to do this as a guard, where now it's just like, okay, you know how to do it, just execute it. So that's been a big difference, I'd say, from year one to year two, just the comfort level's different. Yeah, a lot less.
The stress level was way down. Sorry, that was a little quiet. Stress level was way down. Now, he had a lot of reasons for stress last year also. Rookie first-round pick is under a lot of pressure. Then he was changing positions to guard. Then he had an appendectomy after week one, lost a lot of weight as a result of that surgery. And never really got all the way back to himself throughout a tough rookie season. Had a terrible left tackle playing next to him throughout. So there were a lot of reasons for stress. Both Levis and Skoronski, obviously rookies last year. And, I don't want to get in the habit of doing too much comparing to Callahan versus Vrabel. And I may expand on this and talk to more guys about it who weren't necessarily rookies last year. But I can't help but factor in here something neither of them talked about, but that I think is a presence in this. This is a stressful thing to play for Mike Vrabel. The best guys thrive on that coaching stress. that comes as a part of it. I don't think it's an easy thing to be a rookie for Mike Vrabel. And I don't think it's an easy thing to come back from injury under Mike Vrabel. So I just felt like cast in that there was a little bit of weaved in there into the stress that those two guys felt last year, and weaved into the lack of stress they feel coming into this year. There's the change in coaches. Callahan much more laid back, Vrabel much more intense. Not that Callahan's not going to be intense at appropriate times, but that struck me. I may explore this further, but I think there's something there. Now, you need to be stressed, obviously, at certain times. Stressed, have stress put on you, not be stressed out. And so worth considering, worth examination there. Appreciate those of you who have joined the room. We can get a bigger and better conversation going if everybody be kind enough to retweet. And if you're watching on YouTube or listening after the fact on Apple or Spotify or iHeart, please like, subscribe, rate, review. All of those things are a big help to the cause. Another thing I want to talk about here, talking about the differences in Callahan. Under Callahan, injured guys are going to generally be at practice and observe things, which is the norm around the league, I believe, certainly in my experience and with all the previous Titans coaches. Guys, if able, were generally out and watching practice. Vrabel didn't find benefit in mental reps. I think mental reps are generally oversold. But still, if you're out there, you're involved, you're standing with the guys who are not taking this certain rep at your position. You're with the position coach, maybe the coordinator, and you're not isolated and independent of those guys. So we saw it from L'Jarius Sneed yesterday. We'll see it from Chidobe Awuzie in the coming days, and we'll see it from whoever is out for however long. If they don't have urgent rehab to do during practice, they'll do their rehab out of practice hours, and they'll be a part of practice. But Callahan, it was stunning that he casually stepped to the podium and told us, a little bit about practice, about the transactions, and that Chidobe Awuzie had, a calf injury and was going to be out a couple weeks. Jeff Fisher, once in a while, would have been forthcoming with something like that. Mike Munchak was not. Ken Wisenhunt was not. Mike Mularkey, maybe at times in a confirming kind of way. Mike Vrabel, definitely not. This is a huge change that instead of all of us media and fans speculating about Awuzie, when will he be back? What is he out with? Me making phone calls, sending texts, trying to dig to find out what's up with him, which I would only do with guys, who are a certain level of player. And then, and had, I'd hit on some, but not hit on plenty. Now he just puts it to bed. Hey, we know what's up with Chidobe, and we know roughly how long he'll be out. And that's that. Pretty simple, pretty obvious. Not very complicated. Quite a stunning reversal to something that's quite obvious and easy and didn't have to be such a big deal for Callahan's predecessors. So those are a couple things that were on my mind coming into this. I see a lot of questions stacking up, starting with Robert Stewart, who asks, any clear difference so far in Burks? He's definitely thinner. Haven't talked to him yet, but I think he's trimmed down for sure. And the Titans are. He's a more physical guy, certainly, than Calvin Ridley's going to be. Should be a more physical guy than DeAndre Hopkins is going to be, but he's lost weight, and there'll be a conversation with him soon about that. Ridley or Pollard as veteran leaders, Josh Robbins wants to know. It's too early to tell that way. I mean, I think Pollard is a quieter guy. Ridley, likes to be in the middle of stuff with the receivers at least. So not sure so far about that. No, Junes is asking about Vrabel in his first year as head coach. Vrabel was never forthcoming about injuries or much at all. So it's a much different deal, as somebody whose name I'm not going to try to pronounce here says. It's a clear case where the information transparency is just better. The calf injury for Awuzie being disclosed headed off what would have been swirling questions about him. Glad that's not happened. I think that's, an obvious thing. Michael Collinsworth wants to know about the best pass rushers available as free agents. Carl Lawson, to me, is top of the list. He's with the Jets last year. He had back issue early in the season, and then once he got healthy, the Jets are pretty stacked at the edge, and he was a healthy scratch a decent amount of time. Fell out of favor. Don't know about his health at this stage, but have not heard his name mentioned much. That is a guy I think the Titans should certainly be monitoring and be looking at. Sound of it is that the Titans intend to give these guys a chance and see how they look. So, that's given Weaver a bigger chance, Caleb Murphy, Thomas Rush, undrafted guy or two who I don't have down yet. Khalid Duke, Jalen Harrell, the 7th round pick, who's made a couple plays so far already. So Titans are going to see what they have in those guys before they let themselves get overly concerned and look to make a move. Hi, Kane. How you doing? Another corner, another calf injury, Robert says. Yeah, I don't hear the fan base exploding about a soft tissue injury, which is interesting. If this was Vrabel's team and there was a soft tissue injury there, we would hear all about it. I did not go to the Journey Def Leppard concert. I'm not a big Def Leppard guy, but I would have liked to have seen Journey, though I still have a hard time with I know the new dude is supposed to be good, but he is not. In fact, Steve Perry. And who was it that opened for them both? Steve Miller. I would have been curious about Steve Miller. DeMarcus says, old news, but that was a terrible Derrick Henry take. It really wasn't. It really wasn't. I mean, you root for players or teams. It's not scandalous by any means to say that it's silly to root for the Ravens. It's silly to root for any team that's not your team in the AFC, which is stacked. Titans and Ravens have a bitter history. The Ravens got in the Titans' way in 2 years where the Titans thought they had a very good team that should have advanced far in the playoffs, certainly in 2000. And I understand you love Derrick, but you can love Derrick and not root for Derrick to have great success. I don't understand it. Are you a fan of players or are you a fan of team? It's a pretty easy question. I think there's a generation gap. I would guess that you're young, DeMarcus. But the more you root for former Titans going elsewhere, the less you are about current Titans now. Period. It's very simple. And the vast majority of the people agreed with me on this, by the way. And Derek, by the way, didn't take some huge shot at me. He made a joke. He said, go find something else to do. It's funny. I talked to Derek on text. We're fine. It wasn't a big shot. It turned into a huge thing. I don't mind the Twitter hits, but, New York Post writes, Henry mashes a critic. Well, first off, that was a jokey line that wasn't a mashing by any means. And I wasn't critical of Derrick Henry. I was critical of fans. So people can't read, can't comprehend. It's really a big disappointment all around. Can't say anything that I said very clearly what I said. I was on the radio at the time. Then I typed up what I said on the radio. People's inability to comprehend, it's giant disappointment. But it shouldn't be a surprise to me anymore. But it still is a surprise to me anymore. And here's G saying it's such an old boomer take. Well, so you're a fan of the Ravens and the Titans now? That's not how sports work. I mean, go ahead, root for everybody you want. You're allowed to root for whatever you want. And I'm allowed to tell you it's dumb. So if you're rooting for the Titans and the Ravens, that's dumb. These teams compete against each other for playoff berths and playoff positioning. So if you're rooting for both of them at the same time, what are you rooting for really? And G, you're not listening. You can't read Derrick Henry's thing either. Derrick didn't say, I had no life. He said, find something else to do. Like, why this topic? And why this topic is because we ended up talking about it on the radio. And quite frankly, it made for good radio fodder. Had a lot of people calling in on both sides of the argument, and had a lot of people obviously engaged on Twitter with strong feelings on both sides. More on mine than on yours, G. And I'm guessing you're probably 12 to 17 years old. Definitely not 30. And here's D Gup, who's on the right side of things. I guess I'm old. I wouldn't pull for the Ravens if my kids were on the team. You're rooting for success for those who you like. If Derrick Henry has success, it is going to hurt the Titans, period. So if you're rooting for big success for Derrick Henry, that hurts the Titans because the Ravens doing well is not good for the Titans. So you're not that deeply concerned with the Titans' success. That's fine. Just admit it. That's about all for you, G. Nice to have you here. Fourth quarterback, Calvin Evans wants to know, who do I think is going to be the fourth quarterback, Brownlee, Avery, or Judy Lawley? I think everything points to Brownlee. Brownlee's been out there pretty regularly among the second batch of people. He can play inside and outside. I think when they brought him in, it was clear that they were looking for a guy who could be the third outside guy. And he's also got versatility, so that if McCreary went down or they decided for whatever reason, if L'Jarius or Cheeto couldn't play, they could put McCreary outside conceivably and put Brownlee inside if they're more comfortable with that. But I'd say Brownlee is the third outside guy at this stage. Judy Lawley's been, made a good initial impression. Garrar is not out of the mix either, but Garrar is predominantly an inside guy, so that would be a kick McCreary outside situation or a McCreary gets hurt situation. Avery is what he is. And there's obviously one name we're not talking about there, and it's Caleb Farley. Well, they obviously weren't very impressed. Robert asks why cut Dylan Johnson this early in camp. Obviously weren't very impressed with him, and he was the 90th man on the roster, and they felt like they needed Shane Ray as an extra outside backer. I don't know how many lives that guy's got. I mean, he's not making the 53. And if he does, that's a huge problem. And they needed Corey Levin back. I mean, he's got a lot of lives too, but Brunskill was back pretty quickly, but really doesn't want to play backup center, though he doesn't get to say where he plays. But bringing those two guys in, they had one empty spot and they needed a spot. And Dylan Johnson they weren't as impressed with him as we were. Third running back, Haskins and Chestnut are in competition there. Jabari Smalls maybe has a chance. AwakenToTheEternal.com. Are all the UFA running backs cut on the Titans? They cut one. So you turn that into all. That's an interesting jump. Are all the undrafted rookie running backs cut? Jabari Small, undrafted rookie running back out of Tennessee from Memphis, not cut. So they had two. They cut one. Not all. Kane Martin. You can be happy for someone's success without rooting for it to happen. There, that's fine. Look, I'm in more of a position to root for Derek. I don't have a rooting interest in the team, and I like to see guys I like have success. It's more reasonable for me to be pleased to see Derek Henry be successful than it is for most of you. Is Tannehill holding out for a starter job? I thought he would have been picked up by now, D. Gupp says. Well, I mean, most everybody kind of filled out their quarterback rosters, and sounds like Tannehill had some opportunities in that he didn't really like. So now I would think he's waiting for somebody to get hurt and a good opportunity to open up there. Certainly the best available quarterback. So if somebody goes down somewhere, that's the guy that you would want to see. The Ravens' success, DeMarcus, does directly impact the Titans' success. I mean, you can nitpick and say, well, in this game between two AFC teams, if the Ravens are playing Pittsburgh, well, I think the Ravens are going to be better than Pittsburgh. If the Ravens are playing Cleveland, well, there are two teams that are both probably going to be in a playoff fight. So go ahead, knock yourself out and root for the Ravens. It's just weird to me. I'm a huge fan of the Yankees. You can put the best Yankee in history on the Red Sox, the Yankees' arch rival. I would never root for them. And I'd do the same with the Orioles, who are not the Yankees' arch rival, a secondary rival. So if you want to say Baltimore's not the primary rival, well, you put them on somebody that the Yankees have contested for playoff berths, and I still would like, well, I don't want him hurt, but I'm not rooting for him. I just don't. It's a softening of sports fandom. I'm very comfortable saying that, and I don't think there's a real strong argument to counter it. And there are a lot of people in here who feel the exact same way. Dylan Johnson didn't want to play special teams. Says who? It's AwakenToTheEternal.com, who needs a much shorter name in here. G needs a longer one. Awaken needs a shorter one. How can you say Dylan Johnson didn't want to play special teams? There's no undrafted rookie in the history of mankind who has any special teams capability who dictates whether he's going to play special teams or not. Spencer asks about Jerron Christian and Leroy Watson. More likely to make the roster than Duncan or Ojukwu. Well, they're not more likely to make the roster than Ojukwu. Ojukwu's a top-level backup minimally. He's played starting right tackle through all of OTA's minicamp and the first 2 days of training camp. Jerron Christian, the Callahan was asked about him. He didn't even mention him by name in his answer. And he's nowhere notable in the first 2 days. They're both depth guys, Christian and Watson. You know, in the same pool as Duncan, I would think, fighting for spots, need to show that they're flexible and can be relied on to play either tackle spot in a pinch. But that's got to sort itself out, and don't know much about them without pads on. Farley was back in the spring. Farley is not on any special plan. Jeremy asking about his status. This is incorrect, MB. Said if the Ravens win their division, it has no impact on the Titans winning their division or getting a wild card spot. They need to take care of their own business. If the Ravens win their division, that means they push Cleveland or Cincinnati into wild card battle position. And wild card battle position is probably where the Titans are battling for other wild card position. You want the Ravens not to be in the playoffs, just like you want Cleveland not to be in the playoffs, just like you want Cincinnati not to be in the playoffs. So are you granting the Ravens the one playoff spot of the AFC North? Is that your plan? It's better if they lose as much as possible. It's better if every AFC team that comes in at playoff contention loses as much as possible. You want a bunch of 8-8, 9-7, 7-9 teams. It's hard to hear. Doris asks, have I noticed any trash talk on Sweat's conditioning from teammates? No. Well, it's hard to be in range of those kind of conversations. Kane says, think we'll do more 2 tight end sets with some of the early praise Wiley's getting? No, this is a 3-wide team. 3 wide's going to go way up. 2 tight's going to go way down. Now, Wiley may play in front of Chig because the Titans in 3 wide are pretty small and they need some size, and Wiley gives them more size than Chig. And so that's a significant difference. Michael wants to know what Titans player will be the best value in fantasy drafts. He thinks it has to be Levis. I mean, if you're in a regular 8, 10, 12 team fantasy league, you should be nowhere near Levis going in. They're easily 10 or 12 quarterbacks who are going to be at the start of the season likely to put up better numbers than Will Levis. I would think, as a 2 or 3 receiver, Calvin Ridley or DeAndre Hopkins wouldn't be bad. As a 3rd running back, 2nd or 3rd running back, Pollard, Spears. But there's not a lot of fantasy value on this team. Nick Folk will kick, some field goals for sure. The defense, if it's as good as a lot of people expect it could be, might be a good value as a defense, but you should be leaving that to the end and just taking what's around. I don't think there's a lot of great fantasy value on the Titans. Spencer's asking about leadership. Do I get the vibe the team respects Levis's leadership outside of lip service? I don't think it's lip service. I mean, he's a quarterback. He's got a lot of moxie. He's a really likable guy. And for the most part, he's doing the right things in the huddle, executing well. Scored a lot of points by taking those guys to Cabo and organizing workouts at Vandy. But that's, like Callahan said, that's what starting quarterbacks around the NFL do. And that's what leaders do. They take guys with them. And he didn't mean like with them on a plane to Cabo. He meant like, come on, follow me. And Levis has been like that. I think Simmons is overrated as a leader, and that they're pushing this thing that Jeff has to go from leading the line to leading the whole team. I think there are other places for leadership to emerge where they can find more accountability and just let Jeff do his thing. It's a little early. Brandon Ward wants to know, from what I've seen, is Levis going to be legit this year? I mean, it's 2 practices and they're not throwing deep. Does he have qualities to be legit? He stands in against pressure, which is something not a lot of guys, young guys, are willing to do. And they get flustered and rattled and skittish. Got super quick release and a big arm. Those are good qualities to have. The decision-making, not as much of an issue as I anticipated coming out of college. Accuracy, hasn't been great, but they also threw deep a ton, and those are low percentage passes. So there's a ton of stuff about Levis that remains to be seen. A word about my sponsor, Zen Sports. You need to download the Zen Sports app. Get on there and get yourself an account. Start it up. You go on there, you use the code TNPaul, and if you bet as little as $10, they will give you a free account to paulkuharsky.com. It's a pretty sweet deal. They'll pay for a year's membership. Sweet. So you can go on there right now and make bets on everything that's going on. Find yourself a nice parlay. And the first bet, if you choose to go bigger than that $10 to get the free membership at paulkuharsky.com, you got no danger first wager. So you make a nice bet. If you win it, fantastic. If you lose it, you're taking some risk, but you get your money back. So find a bet that's plus 500 or less, and get your account at Zen Sports going on. They've been super good to me. I hope you'll be super good to them. Zen Sports. Go download the app and use the code TNPaul to get started there. How has Stonehouse looked? The MB wants to know. I don't even know if he punted that second day. The first day they let us shoot video of him punting in a special teams period that's typically not open for that. So he looked good. I mean, there's a lot of difference between, and he said he needs 3-4 weeks to get all the way where he needs to be. But what he needs now is the mental part of feeling people come towards him. They weren't coming towards him during that, but they'll get him in a situation where people are coming towards him. They're not going to hit him, but he can feel like there's some action around him, which is, a big deal for somebody to feel like they could be hit after suffering such a devastated hit to his plant leg. So I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't play in preseason game, or maybe they send him out 1 or 2 times in the last game so he could feel live rush. But all indications are he'll be on track to play on opening day. How much grace will or should Callahan get as a first-time play caller? From Robbie Stanley. Is this the Robbie Stanley? Well, give him some grace. I mean, I'm sure there will be moments that we will ask him about where things don't go necessarily according to plan. So, would it be great if he was calling fantastic games out of the gate? Sure. I think it's unreasonable to expect that. And so, give him some grace in terms of getting his feet wet, so to speak, but have to see how things go for him there before we make that judgment. But I don't think a lot of people are going to be like, hey, let's take it easy on the first time play caller. Let's get back in here. Will the D-Hop contract be a year-long publicly talked about conversation? Well, I imagine there'll be people on the radio talking about it. I would think, and I don't know how much Rand will be talking, but I would imagine post-camp they'll do what virtually every team does and say that they're not going to, and that D-Hop would say that he's not going to be talking about it or looking to negotiate during the season. All these guys always say they're focused on the football season, and they'll take care of the business part after the season's over and let their agent do that. There's no reason an agent can't be talking to a team during the season. If the player trusts the agent, and most players should be trusting their agent. So, but I wouldn't expect, if nothing happens during training camp, I wouldn't expect anything to happen during the season. And I don't think anything should happen during training camp. I think they should wait. Question about Latham from Kane. I think Latham's been, very impressive through the spring and so far. Got a good head on his shoulders, really good work ethic. I don't hear a lot of people crowing about the transition to the left side, but there are a couple more stages to that, and we obviously need to see him on the field over there. But I think pretty encouraging. Seems like a top flight guy, top flight work ethic. Obviously very strong. A lot to work with. So oddly, or not oddly, but we know he and Carthon have seemingly special relationship. The other day they came out of first off, he walked off the field with Carthon. I think this was the first day. And then when we were talking to Callahan or somebody at the podium, they came out of the building together and they walked down to the offensive line area, which is the length of a football field plus. And I thought, well, maybe he's going to do some extra work and Rand's going to watch him. But then they walked back. So it looked like just kind of a walk and talk. Spencer has the Patriots going winless at plus 2,500. I think it's very hard to go winless. I think it's as hard to go winless as it is to go lossless. Question about differences between Vrabel and Callahan's staffs. I kind of talked a little bit about that and talked about the change in culture in a piece I wrote today about Vrabel's slogan being gone and Callahan's slogan being up. So I hope you'll take time to read that. NWI's been just fine. Somebody asking about him. Again, it's been 2 days of practice, so there's not going to be a lot. Biggest surprise player, I wouldn't say he's been a huge surprise by any means, but David Martin Robinson, undrafted rookie out of Temple, got some work higher than I would have expected early on in the first practice. So I would think there's some meaning to that in terms of how he's looked to them behind the scenes and the work he's done behind the scenes. And obviously there's no clear fourth tight end here. Odukoya, I would have thought was, but I think everybody's bunched together there after Chig and Wiley and Vanette. So that's Odukoya, Martin Robinson, and Steven Stelanos. So we'll see what those guys produce. Stelanos out of Iowa, which has a great history with tight ends. Martin Robinson from Temple. Odukoya obviously has had the international exemption on the practice squad and could be there again. Somebody asking about Jamal Adams and his moxie. Yeah, I mean, he's got a lot of swagger. And Blake Bedingfield said that immediately, that he'll bring some real leadership qualities and personality to the defense if he's able to stay healthy. He's a great locker room presence. And I think they can't have enough of that, really, if we're going through the defense and the guys who are going to play, that we know are going to play. We've talked about Simmons and maybe some leadership limitations there that the team seems unaware of or unwilling to acknowledge. But he's the leader of the defensive line, clearly. Leader of the linebackers, Landry, but he's a quiet guy who's not going to command the room as a vocal leader, right? Inside linebackers, Kenneth Murray was impressive in talking to him yesterday, but he's a rather quiet guy. Don't see Jack Gibbons, in that role, and the other guys there aren't, not good enough players to me to have it. Amani Hooker, I think, has some leadership to him, but again, relatively quiet guy. And the corners, I think, are where it's going to come from in Snead and Awuzie. So it can come from anywhere, but I think it needs to hash itself out on defense for sure. And that's going to be an interesting thing to watch and observe and develop. And it's certainly, even though the Titans have not been a great team the last couple of years, Byard's been there at the start of the year, and he's kind of unquestioned, respected by everybody. Listen to what he has to say, watch the way he works, accountable with everybody, to everybody. You didn't have to worry about a leader of that ilk on the defense. Right now, they're still putting it together, and you have to see who emerges to be like that. That's why, in the piece I wrote yesterday about L'Jarius Sneed, I wonder, and they poo-pooed this, but I still wonder, do you lose the opportunity to become that kind of guy a little bit when you're not practicing on a regular basis? And he didn't practice at all in camp for Kansas City last year, though he had established himself already with the Chiefs, right? And he played great for the Chiefs last year. But coming into a new team where you want him to be a centerpiece guy, if he's not practicing very regularly during training camp, he's missing a lot of that bonding time, that establishment time. Now, Callahan says, well, he's in the meeting rooms, he's around, he's present, and there's a lot to be gained from that. And I'm not concerned because of that. But would it be better if he was playing more snaps in training camp practices? Absolutely. And this team's going to play. Starters are going to play in the preseason, Callahan has said. Well, Snead's not. So that's it. Timothy Howell, sorry you need to depart. We won't be going too much longer, though. Thank you. How do I evaluate Carthon's team building? Spencer wants to know. His team building strategy. Front office hiring is done, and the majority of free agency and the draft are done. Well, I mean, the team building's largely done. There might be a guy or two. I mean, it looks on paper like they've done a good job. We knew they weren't going to be able to address everything. So, I'm not especially confident in Elijah Molden, and I think the pass rush was under addressed. But again, they weren't going to be able to get to everything. I think they're probably going to have trouble rushing the passer, strictly with 4. It's going to be one person weak there in a lot of situations, and they're going to try to make up for that with blitzing, which will come down to A, Denard Walker's scheme, and B, the blitzers. So Kenneth Murray can be a good blitzer, we believe. Jamal Adams has been a good blitzer, we know. Amani Hooker can blitz. I think the 2 good corners can blitz. McCreary can blitz. So we'll see. It's been a while since the Titans were a blitzing defense. So that's the one thing that they're counting on. But now, you have to see. A lot of Rand's rep hangs on Sweat. Will Sweat be the player that a lot of people envision him to be, or is he going to be this guy that a lot of other people think was overdrafted at 38? Was Latham the right guy to take as the second offensive tackle? Those are reasonable questions that things seem to be pointing up on, but there's a lot to see about them. So, right now things look good for Rand, but right now is not the time that you make a decision or a proclamation about the work a GM's done through an offseason. What else do we have? Ira wants to know about Ojukwu at right tackle. Does he seem like a viable option? I got to say that yesterday he didn't look very good. Arden Key blew past him at least a couple times, and he looked kind of slow-footed. But he also looked like he was limping around. And I asked Brian Callahan about that after the fact, and he said he didn't know of any injury. So we'll see. You want Nicholas Petit-Frere to get healthy coming off of that knee cleanup that he had after OTAs and minicamp or late in OTAs, and get out there and see if he's going to be the guy. I would still entirely think he's the front runner. I could see that Bill Callahan has cause to like Ojukwu, but I would certainly feel better if he was a guy who was frontline depth rather than a starter. But what you're counting on from Bill Callahan is that the frontline depth can step in and play at a level that the Titans haven't had in some time. And so if Ojukwu is frontline depth and the Titans need to turn to frontline depth, he should be equipped to do that by the end of this training camp. Spencer wants to know, and this is a good question, I think. Do I think objective sports journalism is on the way out, where there are critical questions asked versus cozying up for access, or more fan journalism is the norm? I mean, no. I think there's always going to be room or lane for objective sports journalism and journalism in general. You just hope, that the access for those people remains the same. NFLPA's made a push for closed locker rooms. The league is not in line with that. Certainly the Pro Football Writers Association isn't in line with that. Guys are bigger babies than they've ever been before. And so that generational change is a little bit of a problem in terms of guys being accountable, in terms of guys being bothered by having to dare answer for what they've done or not done. There's plenty of friendly stories written. If you look around, there are features about guys, good deeds and fun stories and the like, all of the time. But I don't think it's unreasonable to have people who are also digging around and asking questions and getting to the bottom of things, particularly when people are are underperforming and not meeting expectations and the like. And so I'm surprised by how many fans are satisfied with fan journalism because of the cheerleading element to it. Like if your team is not doing well or not living up to expectations, why do you want cheerleading? I'm a Yankee fan. The Yankees are bombing out right now. I want answers about why the Yankees are bombing out right now. I don't want cheerleading about. I know Judge and Soto are good. That's not the story that interests me right now. I want to know who they're trading for and why they thought that this lineup was sufficient. So Jabari wants to know if I've said anything about Vrabel's comments on kickers leaving the Titans and then learning how to kick. Well, he did have coaches that were coaching those guys, and they didn't seem to do well here. The Titans were very nonchalant about kickers. I put it on John Robinson as much as on Vrabel for a period of time. And, look, I'm a Vrabel fan. I'm a Vrabel guy. But, the injuries were luck. The bad kickers were luck. A lot of things have gotten chalked up to luck. I didn't ask Simmons that question, Ed, but I should have asked a follow-up. I just wasn't in the mood to be the bad guy on the first day. But why doesn't he have to be accountable when he goes on Twitter and pops off? I do. If I went on Twitter and popped off, I'd sure as hell have to answer to him about it. So why doesn't he have to answer about it? He can just pop off about people on Twitter and then say, I'm not going to talk about it. It's weak. It's soft. Bob Jones, what you're saying is ridiculous. Matthew wants to know who has the best chance to be running back 3. I mean, if they put the focus on special teams, Hassan Haskins is a very good special teamer. If it's more about running, well, Chestnut is a better runner. I think it'd be better to go find a guy off the waiver wire at the end of the thing. I don't think either of them are particularly good runners, good enough runners. Gunnar wants to know, he says, Houston seems established. Would I see Jacksonville or Indianapolis as a bigger threat this season? I mean, Jacksonville didn't know how to win last year, right? They needed to learn. So if Peterson could get them to a place where they learned how to win instead of peeing down their leg down the stretch last year, I would bank on Jacksonville. And I'm still with Trevor Lawrence. I think Trevor Lawrence can be a good quarterback in this league. Oh, there's one thing. Where's my phone? One thing around the league that I wanted to mention that I've got here while you stack up another couple questions. Let me find this really quickly. This is Dave Canales, the new coach of the Carolina Panthers. He's implementing a hybrid work model in Carolina. On Mondays, he plans to be out the door by 5 p.m. His in-season routine is to flip on Monday Night Football later in the evening in his home office, where his kids will often hang out while doing homework as their dad watches film. On Thursdays, the goal is to have everyone home by 7 p.m. On Fridays, the target is 3 p.m. Working efficiently is what will make it all work, Canales said. I think we have the best work schedule in the NFL, he said. As far as the horror stories you may hear, that's not what's going to happen in Carolina. Warren Sharp tweeted that. I don't know where the quotes, where those couple paragraphs are from, but he says, does this make you like Carolina more or less? It makes me like Carolina a lot more. Tony Dungy was this kind of guy. By the way, coaching staff being done on Friday at 3 o'clock. I don't think is exceptionally uncommon. But I loved Tony Dungy because he encouraged his coaches to drop their kids off for school and to not miss big events in their life, the school play, the big game, things like that. This thing that, John Gruden had where, he had to be in the office at 3:30 a.m., I think is largely for show. I think that there's potential to overwork you and your people. And I don't know if Dave Canales is going to be a good coach or not. But I like the philosophy here that if you're efficient, you can manage the workload and not destroy everyone's family life for the duration of the season by not letting them tuck their kids into bed or be at any family dinners or stuff like that. So bravo to him for wanting to attempt that with his guys. Ed says he may be in the minority, but why does everyone want to extend Hopkins now? At his age, why risk it? Let the year play out. Where's he going? He didn't have a big market before. I agree with this entirely. Nobody wanted DeAndre Hopkins when he came here. Even if he has another good year, everybody's looking for young and fast receivers, and Hopkins will qualify as neither. So is there potential to lose him? Yes, but the Titans also need to get younger at wide receiver. They need to draft a receiver high. Boyd's probably, it depends on what he does, but he could very well be a one-year guy. You have to leave a sliver of potential for Treylon Burks to have a big year and get himself back in a position where he should be on the field as a top 3 guy. I don't think that you need to sprint to re-sign Hopkins. He said he loves it here. If he loves it here, and there's no reason to not believe it. I mean, he clearly loves it here. Then I think he would listen to a reasonable contract offer after the season. David Jackson says, do I think the new coaching staff approaches preseason differently? Or are they just getting a new system in place and want starters to get live reps? I mean, they're definitely approaching the preseason differently. Callahan said, Seattle, they'll play less after 2 joint practices, and those joint practices are always more valuable than the games. But he said these guys need to play and play together. And they'll play enough. Well, that's more than Vrabel the last couple of years. And whether the complaints about the Titans not being ready for opening day, having come out of those guys, the starters not having played, hardly having played in the preseason, were legit or not, that's not going to be an available excuse for this year's team because those guys are going to have played in 3 preseason games. In all 3 preseason games. And I don't mind that philosophy for a coach, a new coach of a new roster. But you say that knocking on wood, right? As soon as one guy gets hurt in that experience, the whole fan base is going to say, should have shut them all down. No reason anybody should have played, blah, blah, blah. I think you got to play some football to get ready to play some football, and you hope nothing bad happens. Take a couple more here and be going. Ed Henry has the dreaded youth baseball tournament where he had a 9 a.m. game and a 3:30 game. What are those boys doing to kill time? That is a rough one. Do I think Caleb Williams is overrated? I do. I think people are too high on Chicago. It's a long way to go from where Chicago's been to where people think Chicago's going this year. And yes, teams do it, but Green Bay, not a bad team. Minnesota doesn't have a great quarterback situation, but the Vikings have a lot of talent. And Detroit, if Detroit's, they'll probably fall back to the pack, but Detroit's extremely talented. So I think it is going to be tough for the Bears to make this gigantic jump that everybody seems to be envisioning for them. That was a very, very fast hour. I really appreciate you guys coming in. Please go back and watch or listen from the beginning. We'll be up on the podcast audio sites pretty quickly. Stay tuned at paulkuharsky.com. A lot more good stuff coming. Saturday's practice, I know a lot of media is not going to be there. A lot of people have conflicts going on, unfortunately for them. I will be there. Hope to see a lot of you there. This podcast won't be stale after that one practice, though. So good to see you. Keep reading, paulkuharsky.com. Send a friend. Don't block the box, and be sure to lock your locks. We'll see you soon. Thanks.